Welcome to another resource for living life with wisdom, purpose, and faith. Brought to you by Shepherd's Heart Ministries. Shepherd's Heart is a 501c3 evangelical nonprofit located in Bozeman, Montana. Join us for one of our many events in the Gallatin Valley as we seek the lost, strengthen the found, and together shine more brightly for Jesus. And now, on to today's resource.
So, every time we get together, we ask, how many of you are here for the first time tonight? Let's see a show of hands. Whoa. That just kind of amazes us every time, how many new guys we get every time. So, just because we got a bunch of new guys, bear with me a little bit. I'll just tell them a little bit about why we do this. We kind of came up with this idea maybe 6 to 8 months ago. Doug and Daniel were like kind of at the forefront of planning this, and it's just kind of really simple. Everybody at some point in your life is going to have to ask yourself a really important question, and that's why am I here? And how did I get here? And there's really only two answers. One, you're an evolutionary chance that you came by chance to this earth. The second one is that there's some intelligent being out there that created you for a reason. And the After Hours team believes we have the answer and that we need to share that with you. And that's that there is a God and none of us are here by chance and that He created us for a purpose. And so we think that's so important that this is what we do. We throw a bunch of food together and we invite you guys, and Doug shares this building, and it's basically because we feel it's so important that we know a God and we believe in Him that we just want to tell everybody about that. And you guys might, in a crowd this size, you're probably all over the board in your spiritual journey, from really not knowing a God to maybe knowing there is a God to maybe believing in God. And wherever you're at, we're glad you're here, because that's why we're here, to kind of share what we know and what we believe. So, there's three parts to After Hours. The first part is the food, prepared by the best wing-it chef I have ever seen, Doug over there. The second part of it is just meeting a bunch of guys and just hanging out and doing some networking and some talking and just making new friends. That's our second part. And the third part is just some type of a Bible story, Bible lesson. And we've done a few different things here. We had a Bible story and then just kind of read a Bible story and just talked our way through it. Last time we had a panel up here. And tonight I'm just going to take a scripture and then kind of work through a few things and some stuff I've read and stuff through that. So we're just going to start by reading text here. It's Philippians 2, 1 through 11. You've all got these on your table if you want to look at them. So it's called Imitating Christ's Humility. Therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, any comfort from His love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, any tenderness or compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and of one mind. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, rather in humility value above yourselves. I'm not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to His own advantage. Rather, He made Himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man, He humbled Himself by becoming obedient to death, even the death on a cross. Therefore God exalted Him to the highest place and gave Him the name that is above every name, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue acknowledge that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. When I was thinking about what to talk about tonight, I kind of started thinking about what would have been good for me to hear when I was back 20, 30 years of age, which probably the majority of this group is. And I thought I'd take that along with a book that I've just been reading called Intentional Living by John Maxwell. And then I thought I'd take a little March Madness basketball and kind of do like Doug does. I just throw it all in the pot and kind of see what comes out. And hopefully it's something kind of good. So John Maxwell in the book Intelligent Living starts out by saying, take a blank piece of paper and write your story on that piece of paper. And for a lot of you probably have written 2 chapters, maybe starting your 3rd chapter. You're the author. You have the ability to write the rest of the story, and you have the ability to write the end of the story. So I'm maybe about to chapter 6 in my story. We've all got a different story, and we can write it however we want. We are the author. About 8 years ago, I heard somebody say, and I don't even remember where, but it stuck with me and it hit me. It said, other than the books you read and the new people you meet, you'll be the same person 5 years from now that you are today. And that just really hit me, and I thought, I don't think I really want to be the same person I am 5 years from today or 10 years. And so I started thinking about my story, and I said, I'm going to change a few things. So I started just reading. I became a very avid reader. I read anything I can get my hands on about all different subjects. And I changed the church I went to, and I started going to a new church, and I met a whole bunch of new friends. And part of that was I just wasn't really challenged where I was in my life. I just felt like I was kind of stagnant. I looked at my friends. Everybody was like me. We were all in agriculture. We talked about the same things every time we got together. I wasn't being stretched at all. And I just thought, I want to grow the rest of my life. I want to get better. So for all of you, you can analyze where you're at in your story, and you can, at any point, start writing a new chapter. So how many of you want to live a life that matters? Or another way, how many of you want to live a life of significance? I would say everybody does. We're here for however many years. We want to live a life that counts. We want to matter. We want to kind of someday be able to look back and say, I affected something, I had an impact somewhere. We don't just want to go through this life and at the end say, what was that all good for? So I want to read a couple of quotes from Maxwell's book that talks about living a significant life. The first one, now listen carefully, I might ask some of you what jumped out at you at this. To be significant, all you have to do is to make a difference with others wherever you are with whatever you have day by day. And the second quote is, when you intentionally use your everyday life to bring about positive change in the lives of others, you begin to live a life that matters. Anything jump out at you in there? Throw it out if you want to say it.
Living with what you have.
What was that?
Doing with what you have.
Do with what you have.
Not feeling like you have to have a lot more to do anything.
Okay.
Make a difference.
You hear that? Do with what you have. What was that one?
It's about people.
It's about people. And that's kind of what I was getting at there. The thing that I heard in that was, it's not about you. And I think that's just really ironic that to live a life that's significant, the world would tell you it's all about you. Image is everything, right? That's what we're taught all the time. But Maxwell is saying, to live a truly significant life, it's not about you. It's all about others. So I've had the privilege of getting to know some really successful people in my life, people I really admire. And when I say successful, I'm not just saying they're wealthy. I'm saying they have successful marriages, great relationships with their families. They've been involved in good businesses. So of those people, how many of them you think when they turn like 50, 60 years old, wake up someday and just say, what happened? I'm super successful. Think that ever happens? No, I don't think so. They're super successful because they've lived an intentional life. Their goal in life was not success. Their goal was significance. So remember our definition of significance. It's not about you, it's all about others. How to add value to others. So if we look back at our verse that we read, who lived the most significant life that's ever been lived? Jesus Christ, exactly. Jesus' life, as we read in those verses, it says, don't do anything out of selfish ambition. Did Jesus have any selfish ambition? None. Jesus wouldn't have come down to this earth if it was about him, if it was about his ambition. Did Jesus make everything about us? Absolutely. What value would we have if it wasn't for Jesus' life on this earth and his death on the cross? Christ is the most significant life that's ever lived. And it says to have that same attitude as Christ. So, there's always a natural downward pull to life. You know, if we want life always to be up and right, it seems like a lot of it is down to the left. It's always a slide. What happens if you stop climbing? Yeah, you're going to start going the other way. I think it's a fair comparison to say it's, you know, you always hear about you're like swimming upstream, and if you stop swimming, you go downstream really quick. I'd say it's more like if you've ever been on a large body of water, like a large lake, and you're fishing and you decide to drift for a while, because you're looking at the surroundings in the water, you don't even notice that you're drifting. You can sit there for a couple hours and just kind of relax and look at the water around you, and all of a sudden you'll look off in the distance and you go like, wow, like I've moved a mile down the lake. That's what our life is like if we're not intentionally living our life. You can just get so swept away by all the events, all the stuff of your life, that you find yourself drifting slowly away. It's not something that just all of a sudden happens to you. If you're not living intentionally, trying to add value to other people's lives, you naturally are going to slide. You know, the thing I find out interesting about evolution is we're supposed to be all evolving to a higher state, right? And yet, if you look at the world, nothing gets better naturally. Everything decays, everything falls apart on its own. And the same thing with our life. If you don't significantly look at ways to intentionally, you know, build things in your life, your marriage, your family, whatever, it is the natural course is for it to decline. There's just the chaos of life that just tries to pull us down. There's TVs now with hundreds of channels to watch. You got your social media, your internet, your YouTube. You got stuff. Chaos, I'll call it. There's chaos everywhere. And that's what slowly grabs us and slowly drifts us backwards if we're not living intentionally. So March Madness started tonight, and I thought to honor that, I should do a John Wooden quote. I've been in basketball kind of my whole life. I played it, I coached it, I watch it a lot. And so John Wooden to me is like just a little below Jesus. Okay? He's real close. He's way up there. So John Wooden says, do not let what you cannot do interfere with what you can do. And his whole point there is, of all the stuff in your life, so much of it you can't control. Political scene, world events, I mean, how much control do we actually have? But we do have control in some specific areas, And I picked just 3 of those tonight to talk about a little bit, and that's marriages, families, and our workplace. And when I talk about marriages, could be serious girlfriend, fiance, whatever. If you're in a serious relationship, that kind of works for marriage too. So if you're not married, don't just tone me out. It might be coming. So how can we add value to our wives and our marriages? I'm just going to focus on 2 things. One is leadership and trust. Your wife will operate in her best realm, which is the caring, nurturing, loving realm, when she's being led well. And that may sound old-fashioned, it may sound like not politically correct anymore, but I truly believe that's the way God designed the world, and that's the way God designed the family structure, is the man in the home, the man needs to take responsibility for leadership. And that's, I'm saying leadership in like a servant leader, that you're doing your best to lead your wife, not in a my way or the highway type of leadership. And I think places where you need to lead well is in the spiritual part of your home, leading the family in devotions, getting your family out the door to church. Finances would be another one, that you lead well in those areas. If you lead well in those areas, then your wife will feel free to do what she does the best. So another one is trust. So how do you, like we're talking about intentionality and raising the value of those around us. How do you raise the value of your wife? One is trust. How do you gain trust with your wife, fiance, whoever? You have to be an open book. And that's kind of foreign to a lot of us anymore, but I say an open book in your finances. There's no such thing as 2 bank accounts. There's no such thing as your hidden stash. You have to be open in every area, finances included. Your cell phones. It should be open to your wife to pick up at any time and look at. And that seems foreign to a lot of us. When I go for a drive, I set my cell phone alongside me, and my wife, she almost always picks it up, and she says, any messages from the kids today? Any snaps from the kids today? And she goes through my cell phone, and she looks at what my day was about. And because I'm out on the farm all day, she's living her life, doing her thing, and when we get together, she's really interested in who I talked to, what I did. And I always find it so cool that I can say, there's not a thing on there that she can't read. And that's just such a good feeling to me and to her that at any time she can grab that. And so I'll take that to your computers, your laptops, your iPads, whatever. If you want your wife to truly trust you, they should be able to grab any one of those at any time and look at it. One thing that's really prevalent today is pornography. We're talking about adding value to our wives. There's probably nothing that devalues your wife more than to look at pornography. That's just comparing her to somebody else, puts her value. She's saying, I must not be as valuable as the people that my husband wants to look at. So it's totally devaluing to her. It breaks the marriage trust, and that's what your whole marriage is based on trust, and that breaks that right there. And if you're a believer, we're held to a higher standard than just not looking at pornography. We're held to a standard of really your wife is the only woman that you need to be looking at. And it says in the Bible, if you lust after a woman, you're committing adultery in your heart. So, we're all men. If an attractive woman walks into a restaurant or into a room, you'll notice. That's just who we are. That's just we're visual, and we'll notice that. But that doesn't give you the right for a second, a third, or a fourth look. You can observe at one time and then bounce your eyes. And a great book and a great resource for all of you, and I got it on the back of your handout there, is this book. It's called Every Man's Battle, and I would say this should be in every man's library. I've read it multiple times in my life. I've gone back and looked up chapters multiple times, because it truly is, guys, every man's battle. You will battle the problem with your eyes throughout your life, and here's a great resource to help you battle that. He's got some really good stuff in here that just kind of helps you plan for, like, there's a situation I wasn't ready for, now what do I do? If you read the book, you're kind of ready for those circumstances. So the next area besides our wives is our family. And I got another great wooden quote. So if he's that close to Jesus, then if you quote wooden, it's like almost quoting the Bible, right? Okay. So the best thing a father can do for his children is to love their mother. And it's just such a great quote. Your kids will learn more about how to treat the opposite sex from your example with your wife than from anything else. So if you treat your wife in a special way, in a high regard, you love her, you respect her, you honor her, that's telling your little boys in the family, and as they grow up to junior high, women are something special. Girls are something special. They need to be treated special. And that will carry through so that when your young son starts to date, he's going to say, I know how to treat women. I know how to treat this girl because I've seen my dad do it. He treats girls with respect. Your little daughters, when they see that relationship, a really healthy relationship between you and your wife, they'll say, I know how I should be treated. I should be treated like my mom was treated. And that's special. And my dad always talks really kindly to my mom and treats her really special. So when your daughter goes out at 15, 16, 17, whatever, on that first date, if she isn't treated like that, it's going to feel wrong. It's going to feel, this ain't right. Some young guy goes a little too far, she's going to go like, you're not treating me like what I've seen and what I believe is right. So you're going to have a huge impact on your kids that way. I just met a guy over here that's going to raise 5 boys, Micah over here, just a little bit ago, and just never underestimate the impact you're having on your children. Psalm 103 verse 13 says, the Lord is like a father to his children, tender and compassionate to those who fear him. I find that really interesting, saying the Lord is like a father, comparing God to us. I mean, how scary is that? That we are tender and compassionate, so that's how God is. It puts a ton of pressure on us, don't it, guys? So, this statement seems pretty heavy, but listen, and I think it's very true. You are the image of God, the Father, to your children. And I don't think I really understood this until in the last few years, how true that is. I was at a class taught like probably 6-7 years ago from Sam Summers at Journey Church. It was a class called Advanced Learning, and it was Advanced Spiritual Studies. It was just trying to get you a little deeper into the Bible. And I sat next to a guy named Andy for like 4 lessons, and I got to know him a little bit. Super nice guy. He was in the military, clean cut, buzz cut. He was just, I really admired him right away. And it was yes, sir, no, sir. And I thought, and he was pretty high up in the military already. And I thought, this guy's got his act together. Well, Sam started teaching about a father's blessing and how every kid wants his father's blessing. And he started talking about, what it's like to have a loving father and a father that's always there for you. And I looked over at Andy and I saw tears in his eyes, and he kind of said, hesitantly, he said, I have no idea what you're talking about. And then he shared with us that he had a father that left him at an early age. He was raised by a single mom. And when he heard somebody talking about God the Father as being loving and being there for you and caring about you, he said, I can't conceive of that, because he had never had that relationship with his father. And then Sam, who was leading the class, was like in his probably mid-60s, early 60s, just if you've ever known Sam Summers, just like one of the neatest guys ever. And he said to our class, he said, I had a father at an early age commit suicide, and then my mom remarried, and the stepdad was abusive to me. And he said, I still struggle all the time with issues from my childhood, from those relationships. And Sam, he was a pastor his whole life. And he seemed like he had his act together like nobody I'd ever met. And he's saying to me, I struggle so much because of the fathers that I had in my life. So just think about that as dads. What an impact you are going to have on your kids for the rest of their lives. In many ways, how you treat your kids is how they will view God as their father. I think of my dad. He was a really strong, he's a big guy, strong guy. He would take the hay bales out on the farm and throw them like way up onto the pickup. I'd stack them in place, have the pickup drive along. He could just take these like 70 and 80 pound bales and throw them up onto the pickup. And he was, if you had to put it on a scale of my dad, he was strong. I would put him on the disciplinary side. And if you went caring and compassionate, that probably wasn't my dad until you later in his life when you really got to know him. But that was the scale tipped heavy that way. And if I think of my God now, I think a lot like my dad. And I have to remind myself as a Christian over and over and over, God is caring, He's compassionate, He loves you, He forgives you. Why do I always have to remind myself? Because I never saw that in my dad that much. And so as you see your dad, and just think about your dads right now and then think about God, and I can almost guarantee you how you think about your dad is a lot about how you think about your God. Another way is if you don't feel like you have the approval of your dad, you'll have that carry through. You don't feel the approval of God. If you raise your kids in that way where you'll say to them, I'm really disappointed in you. If you say that a lot, you're going to grow up with the God, the Father, you think is disappointed in you. So be really careful how you raise your kids, because that is the example and that is the view of God their Father going forward. Another thing I want to just talk about briefly here is your example is probably going to speak louder than your words to your kids. And your kids are always watching you. As fathers, it's almost like you're on a stage and your kids are the audience and they're watching all the time. So are you teaching your kids to serve others by your example? Are you going out and doing service stuff around the area and the community? Great training tool for your kids. If you're the type that likes to give to charity, likes to tithe, don't hide that from your kids. Show them. Say, hey, this check is going to the church, this check is going to Salvation Army, whatever, nonprofit. Show your kids that giving is important. That example will carry through in their lives. Show your kids will know what's important to you by how you spend your time. And you can tell your kids over and over and over, like, going to church, that's really important to my family. But then during ski season, we don't go to church that much. During archery elk, we don't go to church that much. You can carry it on and on and on, They will see what's important to you by where you spend your time. It isn't gonna sell if you say, kids, church is really important to my family, and then during summer soccer season, you're chasing all over the nation watching the kids play soccer, and you never go to church. They'll figure out what's really important in your life. One other area, and I've talked with Doug about this several times, and this might be our fault, our generation, as much as your fault. I don't see young men leading, especially like in the area like in local government or in church like my generation did. And I'm not sure if we don't ask enough, if life got so busy, but my dad was in leadership kind of his whole life. He just was always leading a board, on a council, some area of his life he was leading, and that just seemed natural. So when I got to be in my 20s, I started leading Bible studies, I was on boards, I was on councils, and now I see the 20 and 30-year-olds of this generation not stepping up into leadership as much. At least that's my opinion. And I think it might be as much our fault that we don't challenge you guys and we don't ask you guys, who is like, we maybe hold on too tight. I think we just have to figure that out, and that will be an example to your kids. If you lead in different areas of your life, your kids will see that as an example, and they will aspire to leadership. One just short story about how much a dad example can mean to you. When I was probably 10, 12 years old, one night, I said to my mom, I can't remember what, I wanted to do something the next day really bad, and she said, well, that's one you better ask your dad. And I said, well, where's Dad? And she said, well, he went to bed like a half hour ago. And I said, well, I really got to know if I can do this tomorrow. And she said, well, he might not be asleep. Sneak in his room and see if he's sleeping. So I opened the door real quiet, and I peeked around the corner to look, and there was my dad on his knees on a hardwood floor praying like a half hour later. And all the devotions we had, all the things he's told me is all kind of faded away. And yeah, they're probably part of me and who I am, but I don't remember any of them word for word, any of that. But that picture, to me, I can close my eyes and see it right now like it was yesterday. Because my dad was a big, strong man, but by his example, by being down on his knees before bed, submitting himself to a heavenly God, showed me what was important in his life, and I'll never forget that. Your example, guys, is just huge for your kids. Finally, the one area that we can affect, we can live significantly, is work. Be the best team player you can be. You know, in our text it says put away selfish ambition. To live a significant life, it has to be about others. It can't be about you. I used to coach basketball, and I loved watching it. And I found you could have like 8 good players and not be a great team because you're missing that one thing. And what's that one thing? It's the kid that made everybody better. You could have 8 good players and be an average team. You could have 4 or 5 average players, but one kid that nobody could stop that made everybody on his team better, and you could have a great team. I was up at the Class C tournament last week watching, and almost every kid had one or two guys that nobody could stop. And that's why they were at the state tournament, because those guys always drew a crowd. 2 or 3 defenders would have to leave their men to go stop that guy, and that would make this average player so much better. So, at work, be that player. Be the valuable guy. If you're the guy that makes your whole team better, who's going to get the promotion? Who's going to move up in the company? When the boss looks around, is he going to want the guy that it's all about himself? Or is he going to want the guy that everybody's better around that guy? Is he going to want the guy that when it comes to promotion time, everybody wants to be on his team because he can make everybody better? He's the guy that'll drop anything to help you finish your project. I mean, he's the guy that when it's 20 below and it's snowing out, he says, I'm going to go start my car, and everybody comes out from work and all their cars got the snow swept off of them. He's the guy that brings coffee to everybody in the morning. Patrick Lencioni says, to be a great team player, you have to be humble, hungry, and smart. And the humble part is, it's not about you, but the smart part is just that. Make your work about making your team at work better. So now on your papers that we handed out, if you turn it over to the back side, we have a little thing called table talk, table discussion. There's two parts there. One is, in what area of your life do you need to be more intentional? Or in what area of your life do you need to be adding value to others? And then the second part is share with your table an area of your life where you are being intentional about building value into others. So just go through those questions as a table and use it as a time to learn from each other. If you're struggling in an area, maybe that somebody else at the table has got a really good idea in that area. And just kind of talk it through. And after we're done, we'll just go around table by table and you have a spokesman or just somebody speak up and just kind of identify an area that somebody in your table think is pretty cool, where you're living very intentionally, whether that's in your work, your marriage, your family, any area of your life that you've decided, I am going to live very intentionally in this area to make a difference in other people's lives. Just go ahead and talk for 10-15 minutes and then we'll come back.
Thank you for listening to this resource by Shepherd's Heart Ministries. For more resources, subscribe to our channel, like us on Facebook, or sign up for our newsletter. If you're encouraged by these resources and would like to contribute financially, visit us on our website at www.shepherdsheartmin.org. Your generosity will help us seek the lost, strengthen the found, and together shine more brightly for Jesus.